It's Anisa again. I'm here talking about Chapter 29, Wilsonian Progressivism at Home and Abroad in the American Pageant. Yet again, it's kind of talking about progressivism, which is similar to the last chapter. And one section in particular kind of stood out to me. I mean, it's definitely a lot about the rights that people got. And it's called Wilsonian Progressivism at High Tide on page 734. This section was very much about the rights for people to make life a better place, to make living standards better, to make work standards better. The Federal Farm Loan Act of 1916 was really good for farmers. It says credit available to farmers at low rates of interest. And let's see what else. The Warehouse Act of 1916 authorized loans of the security of staple crops. So it's kind of like stabilizing crops, but also giving benefits to the farmers. And Woodrow Wilson passed a lot of reforms and different acts to create a better life and a better work environment for the people doing the jobs in the United States. And I just think it's really great that things were able to change, and where Woodrow Wilson was able to create all these acts and reforms that in addition to the past 50 years were also creating a better time for people. But a lot of things were, like semen, like the La Follette Seamen's Act of 1915, yet again, another example of how, it was like making sure that they had enough money to, like, live, basically, and, not brutal working conditions, like reasonable, safe working conditions, which it hadn't always been like that in the past. The Working Men's Compensation Act was about disability, like, the granting assistance to federal service employees during the periods of disability, which is kind of something that, you could take a different, people could take different stances on, saying, yeah, that's right, no, it's not right, but all these are just really good examples of how life was improving and people were trying to improve it. It wasn't just like, I'd like to think of it as something that people were really, like, intent on. Okay, we're changing this, but even though it wasn't exactly that way, it was more of like a slow, kind of like progressive. Obviously, it wasn't just all at once. But it's interesting because in addition to all these things that were helping people out and helping living conditions and work conditions was the Neutrality Proclamation by Woodrow Wilson. And I really find that interesting too, because although you would say it didn't really work out, I don't know, that's interesting too, because basically we're trying to create an environment that was stable, a good working environment, and although, you can't always foresee how things are always going to work out, that Neutrality Proclamation was, trying to make things stable. I mean, right here on page 375, stable government, in quotes, which, I think made a lot of sense then, but even though it didn't always work out. But what I just think is interesting is, all these ideas for progressivism, it's really interesting, because if some of these things weren't being thought about or weren't being changed, then things would definitely be different than they are now. So, just a little insight on chapter 29.